Hi there, my name's Kirsten. This is the Paper Knits podcast, episode number 8. I am a knitter in Edmonton, Alberta, and thanks for joining me today. I don't know what an introduction is supposed to be to a knitting podcast. If you're here, you probably know what a knitting podcast is. You probably watch lots of other knitting podcasts, or you are a relative of mine or a friend. This is my knitting podcast where I talk about my knitting, and I am always grateful that people want to join me and hear about my knitting. That they comment back about things and tell me about their knitting and give me podcast suggestions and connect with me on Instagram and all of that. So if you're here, thanks for being here. You can find me on Instagram as @paper.knits or on Ravelry as thisispaperknits. I've got a couple finished objects today that I'm excited about. One that I was like, oh, I'm finally done. And then one that I was like, oh, I can't believe I finished. So, yeah, and a couple of random, well, one random FO that I just like did in a couple of days in between filming here, and then a couple of random whips. And I think I'll talk about what is kind of like what I'm planning to knit next, what the next couple of months are going to look like here. Yeah, a bit of a life update. So, big news first, I finished my Instant Crush pullover. This is patterned by Joji Locatelli, and it's released I think in August. I knit a sample for Frankie Gray Fibers during the testing period for this pattern, and so that was lots of fun. The original pattern is knit with 2 strands of mohair held double. I'd never done that before, and I got to sample knit, which was like, that was cool. And it was in bright pink colors, which was like not what I would have chosen, so that was fun to knit with when I like wouldn't have knit with it otherwise. And I liked the pattern a lot, and so because that one went off to Frankie Gray Fibers, I promptly decided that I was going to make myself one too, in slightly more muted and subdued colors that are much more me. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. This was the one that I was like, finally I'm done. I just really wanted to finish it. It seems it's bonkers to me that I knit the same sweater back to back. It was much easier go the second time around. Not that it's a difficult pattern, but I just like, I knew the charts off by heart by the time I was working through this one. And yeah, it was time to be done. I don't think I've knit a couple of flax sweaters, but just like kid size ones. I've never knit the same pattern twice. So I know some people like, I've been watching Knitting a Good Yarn, the podcast, and Jackie often knits the same sweater like multiple times. So like she'll make it and then she'll like make it again to like modify it, make it like exactly what she wants it to be. Can't relate. So I've done this one. I won't be casting on another one right away, but I am glad to have it in my closet. I think it's going to be a like very much a go-to, just like everyday sweater for me. So I knit this with Frankie Gray Fibers, but with their just DK base. And so the pattern, like I said, is knit with 2 strands of mohair, works up to a DK weight, a DK gauge. And so I just knit this one with DK weight yarn. And at the time, there wasn't a ton of patterns on Ravelry, projects on Ravelry that had done that. There were a couple people in the testing group apparently, but it wasn't super clear about what the yardage was going to be. I ended up having pretty much exactly what I needed, and so that was good. I have an extra skein of the main color, but that's fine. I'll use that for other things. I mentioned in my last episode that I like went through a bit of a saga trying to pick colors for this sweater, and so I did end up with 2 additional colors with 2 extra skeins of each that I'm not going to use, but I will absolutely use for something else. I just went and found the other skeins that I bought that didn't end up in my sweater. I was trying to decide about what ended up being this dark gray color. I initially bought this one from Frankie Gray Fibers. It was too much contrast. Then I bought this one from Sassy Strings. and still didn't really like it. These ones together, I think will make something very nice. So, it's not a waste, obviously. What I ended up using was, the main color is walnut, the light blue color is called denim, the purple color is called black cherry, and then what I ended up using for my fourth color is a skein. It's from Estelle, just called Double Knit, and it's an acrylic merino nylon blend, and it worked great. It was a great solution considering I'd already bought 4 more skeins of hand-dyed yarn. So like, great, buy commercial yarn. It's like, you know, a wool blend, so it wasn't as expensive anyways because of that. And I think it was a great substitute. I like honestly could not really tell a difference between them when I was knitting. It looks like a bit plumper in the skein, but it knit up fine. So anyways, I think that it all worked out good. I really am happy with the colors that I chose, and yeah, this like just like slides exactly into my wardrobe. So I'm really glad for that. I think it'll be good. One of the things that was interesting about knitting this both times is the gauge. So the pattern's written for a 19 stitch gauge, which is like on the looser end for DK weight. With the mohair, like the mohair kind of like is fluffy, and like it was designed with mohair in mind, right? Mohair held double. That was the intention of the pattern. And so I think that the mohair kind of like fills in those spaces. One of the things I found when I was knitting the sample for Frankie Gray is like I couldn't catch my floats because there was a lot of contrast between the colors, and then the gauge was so loose that you could just see every time there was a float that was caught. And so there's like stretches of 7. It's like pretty common throughout the sweater. There's a couple of places like across like the raglan that ended up being more than that, so I would catch it at the raglan. But otherwise, so for that one I used ladder back jacquard. For this one I just didn't catch floats, except for that like bought across the raglan a couple times where it was like 12 stitches. I like missed one time and I was like, that's excessive. But the gauge feels very loose, and I did not meet gauge. I got 23 stitches per 4 inches, and it's supposed to be 19. Like that's quite a big difference. And I still feel like it's so gapey, and so I didn't love that. It was like did not make the knitting experience that enjoyable, because it felt sloppy. Trying to do color work with like superwash yarn at a loose gauge, trying to keep things even. My steam blocker, or like my steamer, my clothing steamer was like my best friend while I was making this. I steam blocked it so many times to double check, like especially on the sleeves, man. I will put some pictures in of what they looked like, and I only continued because I did steam block it a bit and like made sure, but they looked horrendous. Like they were so puckered and uneven and sloppy looking, and I was like, do I know how to knit? Like what is happening here? I just was so and I just was like, I just wanted to be done. So yeah, I like knew that it was gonna block out, it was gonna be fine. Once I like did a good wet block on it, like it evened out. I think that you like can't tell, and it all is fine. I did bank on it stretching out a little bit more than it actually did, so I have a little bit of like I have my like shirt underneath tucked up because it's long, and these are not. They're kind of like, is that bracelet length? Not sure. And I could probably use like another inch. I think it's gonna be fine. I like forever am pulling up my sleeves anyways, so we'll see how that feels. I thought they'd stretch a bit more, and so when I first blocked it and put it on, I was like, perfect, this is great. And like throughout the course of the day, it like and like went back up again. So whatever. One of the mods I made was that the sleeves are written just straight, and then just like a decreased round rib for the cuff, and then more ribbing. Ooh, that's what I could do. I could add more ribbing. That'd be so much simpler than ripping that out and adding more color work. Okay, I might consider that because I think the pattern has like 3 inches of 3 inches of ribbing. Just to like circle back to that, the pattern has charts galore, and so I just like decided how long I wanted to knit it. It's not like I ended where the pattern told me and then I should have had more ribbing and therefore that's why it was too short. It's like I could have kept going for like many more inches because she just made all of the charts that you might need so that you could customize it however you wanted to. But I could just like easily add a bit of extra length by adding more to the cuff. Anyways, the pattern's written with straight sleeves, decreased round right before the cuff, and then the cuff. So I added decreases along the length of my sleeve, did a few calculations, and I had to also make some adjustments because my gauge was off. And so based on my swatch, I was planning to knit the size 7, which would have had a circumference of 50.5 inches. I have a 41-inch bust. I was aiming for like 44, maybe 46 kind of thing. And so just like, you know, crunching my numbers, whatever. I actually ended up casting on for a size 6 because I didn't want the neckband to be too wide. And then I added extra increases to increase up to the 7. I ended up knitting the yoke for the size 7, but then I cast on extra stitches at the underarm and I ended up knitting the size 8 numbers then around like the bust, the torso, whatever. I still ended up with about 44 inches. And so I was like double checking my numbers. I do so much math when I am knitting, and I probably like 8 times out of 10 feel like really confident in it. Every once in a while I just mess it up and it makes a huge difference. So it's hard to measure what your final circumference is like around your body of the sweater, or like do a flat lay and like, you know, okay, it's 22 inches from pit to pit, then you double that, that's your like approximate circumference. But based on my on my gauge, which like varied a little bit throughout the sweater, and then the number of stitches that I ended up with, I should have had a bust of about 44 inches. And so whatever, I think it fits nicely. I think I was expecting it to be like a little bit more ease, but it's fine. When I was going back and double checking, it's tricky when you like knit a sweater over the course of a long time while there's many other projects going on and then you don't take super great notes. I cast on it also to make sure I had extra stitches on the sleeve, and I don't remember why I did that, because I ended up with more sleeve stitches than I should have. So if that was maybe just a compromise that I'd made at the time so that I could add the extra stitches for the body, I'm not sure. But I think it worked out fine. Like I said, the sleeves could be just like a little bit longer. They're kind of hanged up there, but otherwise I'm happy with it. A couple of my ends have popped out, just like popped through to the front, and so when I blocked it, so I need to go back and fix those. And there's a couple of stitches that were like extra loose. I was really worried when I was like, you know, knitting 7 stitches across. I was really worried about that puckering, especially in the this right here. This was puckering a little bit when I was knitting, and so I was trying to keep that really, really loose. And then there's a couple other spots. Okay, so like here, from like the top of this motif to the top of this motif, there's a stretch of 7. And so I would make sure that my float was very, like, had some extra in it, stretched my stitches out. I didn't want it to get all bunchy, but that meant sometimes just this like one stitch right here was like really sloppy. And so I went back and like fed the yarn back through a little bit just to tidy those up a little bit. There was one spot on the sleeve, I can tell where it is, where I did do ladder back jacquard. I don't know if you'll be able to see that on the camera. Right there, kind of looks like another purple stitch or something in the blue, but it's not. It's where I did a ladder back jacquard thing, and when I picked up for that stitch at the back, it pulled funny. So then I stopped doing that. I don't know why, just like on, like I think that was on my first sleeve. So I'd like had knit the whole body without doing that. And then just like one time on the sleeve, I was like, let's give it a try. But whatever, it's fine. I'm very glad that I just like went with my gut and changed colors. I guess my gut gave me 2 wrong colors, but I made the change to switch out my color, and I'm really glad that I did. I think I would have been disappointed if I had kept those other lighter colors. So yeah. I decided in my last podcast that I was going to start talking about how much things cost, and in the meantime I have started watching a podcast called The Woolly Worker. So you know, last time I said that I like find a podcast and then I just like binge it because I'm like, wow, this is great, and then I binge all the episodes and I'm like, crap, now what do I do? So I've done that now with The Woolly Worker. I still have a few episodes still to go. I haven't completely watched her entire year's worth of podcasts, but she talks about the cost of her projects. And the way that she does it is that she calculates like based on the yardage that she used in her project, based on the price that she paid, whether that was on sale, whatever, and then calculates the cost of her object, whatever, finished object, based on those numbers, knowing that like, hey, if I had like an extra half skein left over, like I'm going to use that for something else, that cost will get factored into that project, rather than me having to add those 4 extra skeins that I bought to complete this sweater, but I didn't actually use them for this sweater. So I like that idea. So like I am going to use those other skeins, and that project then will factor in that money that I've already spent. Anyways, I appreciate how she talks about those things and just like how she calculated it. So I was like, great, that's what I'm gonna do too. So I ended up with, I guess I have this here. I said I had an extra skein of the brown. This is how much left I have for my I had 2 skeins of these contrast colors. And then this one, I had 1.5 rounds left to go on my last sleeve, and I ran out of this yarn. And I had another skein of it, but I was like, that's so silly to go wind up a skein so I can use like a meter of the yarn. Like it just felt so silly to me. And so like it would have taken me 5 minutes to like come downstairs, set up my Swift, wind the ball of yarn, go back upstairs, finish my sweater. Instead, I spent a large amount of time going back and like weaving in all of my ends, and then taking the little like tails and trying to like attach them together so that I could just like get a little bit more yarn so that I could just knit my sleeve. So like I spent like half an hour doing that, and none of the knots held because it's a superwash merino and acrylic. And so they were just, I was like, okay, great, I did it. And then I started knitting, and like they just like my knots immediately came apart. And there was not enough. Like each piece was like this big, right? There was not enough for me to like, I'll weave in the ends. So that was silly. I just like, okay, I just knew I was so close to being done, and I just wanted to be done, and I could have finished it that night, and I was like, nope, I need to put it aside. I went back to it the next day, did it properly. So I barely dipped into that other skein. I feel like I used enough of the other ones that like I couldn't have gotten away without them, and so that makes me feel better about having to buy those 2. Like I said earlier, it was like the yardage was like a little bit of a guesstimate based on like some of the testers' feedback, and I think that Hohi like added some extra onto that, like a buffer or whatever. Anyways, okay, so I ended up using 1,257 meters for my whatever size I ended up with at whatever gauge. That's probably not that helpful for you. Total cost was $102.86. I decided not to factor in price of shipping, price of like, or GST, because I'm not going to remember what I've done. It doesn't need to be exact. I really like things to be exact though, so it's fine. That's just retail price, what I paid, whatever. Somebody on my last video made a comment about how if you're buying a store-bought sweater, that's like, oh my gosh, $50. But if you're like if you're knitting a sweater, like, wow, $100, that's cheap. and just like the different perspective, I guess, about that. And part of why I wanted to start talking about the cost of my knitting projects, I think a couple of years ago I got like super into slow fashion, and that's like the majority of what I followed on Instagram with slow fashion accounts, like either like companies making ethical clothing, or like fashion accounts, I guess that's like what they showed primarily. And I was like, yeah, like really into that for a while. And it's complicated because also to buy ethically produced clothing that has like ethical fabric, ethical manufacturing, ethical distribution, has a very high price point, and it's not often, it's better now than it used to be at the time. Size inclusivity is another thing that is important to me, and so like factoring that in also to those brands. Me having a fluctuating body size, I'm like, I don't really want to spend hundreds of dollars on these like very simple pieces of clothing when my shape is going to change, and so then they won't fit me anymore. And like there's a high degree of privilege in being able to purchase like 100% ethically produced clothing. There is not, that's not, there, that doesn't exist. 100% ethically produced clothing does not exist. But anyways, I was like really wrapped up into that for a while. And also that's tough with little kids. Like, you know what? My kids wear clothes from Old Navy. I wear clothes from Old Navy. I'm wearing Old Navy jeans at this moment. It's just, yeah, trying to find that balance. Anyways, what I was going to circle back to, part of why I like being able to make my own clothes is I have a lot of control over what the materials are. I know exactly what the working conditions are of the person who's knitting the garment. And I appreciate the amount of time and effort that goes into creating clothing. I have a tough time buying a $50 sweater from a fast fashion brand that's made of man-made fiber, that's of poor quality, that was also made by somebody who was not being paid a living wage and has poor working conditions. Like the profit margin for those companies is so astronomical for a garment that will not last. And so to me, it's like it should absolutely be more expensive than $50, but it's not worth more than $50 because of the input cost or whatever for the company itself. I don't know if this makes sense. A zillion people talk about this more eloquently than me. And it's a touchy subject, and so I don't want to wade too far into that. And yeah, with knitting, then there's that whole thing about like wool versus acrylic, and how dare you use acrylic because it's microplastics into the fish, and you have to only use 100% wool. But just kidding, we're just fine with superwash wool, which has questionable impacts on the environment, and we'll happily add nylon to our sock yarn and whatever, but we'll criticize somebody who uses acrylic. Yeah, it's there's nuance to all of that, and sometimes I have a tough time with that. I just like want there to be hard and fast rules about things. Anyways, all that to say, for me to have hand knitted a sweater with almost entirely locally dyed yarn from a local business that I want to support, from Frankie Gray Fibers, to support the designer who seems delightful, Did I say who the designer was? I don't know. I probably put it on the screen. Oh, hello, Locatelli. She seems delightful. Like, great. I get to support her. Part of what the cost of that too is like the amount of entertainment that I get from the act of knitting, which it's not just like I'm a process knitter, right? It's like I enjoy the process of it, except when I'm like trying to finish the sleeves of this particular sweater. But that is also factored into that cost. It's not just like, oh, would I spend $100 on this sweater at a store? I'm not making judgments on people who are committed to buying slow fashion, who only buy fast fashion, who only use 100% wool, who only use acrylic. Like, I think there's space for all of those things. And people being aggressive about it on the internet is not helpful for anybody. So I hope that that's not how I am coming across. Probably coming across like fumbly and slightly insecure about this, because I also feel like I need to know 100% about something in order for me to speak about it, and I don't know 100% about this. There's a lot of factors that play in here. So anyways, moving on. I guess part of why I wanted to knit this sweater right away was because I wanted to join Hohi's fall knit along. And so I don't remember when that started. September maybe? And you had to like sign up for your projects ahead of time. So you had to like pick what you were gonna make. They like give everybody a number. Just like include that. There's a like 1,000 bazillion forum posts on Ravelry for people if you like wanted to like, I'm in the pullovers team, I'm knitting a cardigan, I'm knitting whatever. And so like a lot of chat on there. I find it very overwhelming, so I've not been keeping up with that. But I wanted to, I was like, oh, well, I wanted to knit this sweater anyways. I might as well do it now. I will submit it for the Cal. I have been trying to like keep up a little bit about the other instant crushes that are being made, and it's like fun to see. So, but one of the things that I had signed up for too was in October, there was like a mini challenge of like doing a one skein project. And so I had signed up for this and then forgot, and then remembered on like October 24th maybe. I was like, oh yeah, I was gonna do that. I had like already bought the pattern, and so I did. I did not win one of the prizes. It's like, doesn't matter, it's just a personal challenge for yourself. But anyways, I knit a small shawl. One skein project. I used 100% of the yarn. In fact, I ran out a little bit. This is the lone skein shawl, which is meant to use up one of those like fun random skeins you've got kicking around, a fingering weight yarn. It's got this little bit of lace and kind of like a slip. It's like a slip with yarn in front motif around it. It's like quite long actually. It's like, normally I just like go like this with a shawl, and it's like got pretty good tails, but you know, just I had it on the other day. My house was chilly, and this was sitting next to me, and I was like, yeah, sure, let's put that on. A fingering weight shawl of sock yarn. It's not like super warm, but it made a difference. It kept my neck warmer. So anyways, it was a I wouldn't say it was an enjoyable knit. It was a simple knit. I did mess up. I immediately messed up the first like lace section, and so I was like, do I just leave it? Like, no. The whole point of the shawl is that it has that detail. So I ripped that back and fixed that. The yarn that I used for this is from a local dyer called Things Created Equal. I love her color sense. Like, it's so, I just think she makes like a collection, and I think it just like flows all together so well. She used to have a monthly sock club. Is that what she called it? I can't remember now, which I did for a little while. This is one of their yarns. Things Created Equal. It's called Frozen Over. It's lovely, and I really like the color. It just like has a few little like speckles here and there, little bits of like kind of gold almost throughout it, and so that was fun to, just a little like bit of dopamine as you're as you're knitting along, you know, with a hand-dyed skein. And I ran out at the end. I had like, there's short rows at the end, and I probably had like 6 more to go. It's like a bit still, but I was out of yarn. So I was like, well, whatever, it's fine. I didn't like gauge swatch or anything, like that was not the point of the sweater or the shawl. But I had a random ball of yarn that looked like coordinating enough, which also happens to be things created equal, which is funny. I have a pair of socks made out of this, and that was the leftovers, and so I just used that to bind off the edge. And I think you like can't really even tell, like when I was blocking it, it was kind of like, oh, a little border. So anyways, that'll get tossed into my pile of scarves and shawls. I wore it a couple times last week, taking the kids to school or whatever. So that was $33 worth of project, because it was 1 skein of hand-dyed fingering weight yarn, and I used 100% of it. I did not calculate the like 1 gram of that one that I used. It's fine, it doesn't matter. I said I do like things to be precise, but that was gonna be tedious for me to figure out, so I didn't. Yeah, so that was a other random kind of FO this month. Then the other one that I'm not gonna 100% go into right now, but I just wanted to show it off a little bit because I literally just finished it today. This is the Anuka tank by Florence Sperling Designs. It's a test knit. I'm not sure when the pattern is going to be coming out. The test goes until next week sometime. And this was like, I cannot believe I finished it. So it needs a good block, and I'm gonna like experiment a little bit with how to style it. I was like, tried it on with a bunch of different things today once I finished it, and it's like not, I don't know, I feel like to wear a sweater vest like takes a certain amount of Birdie, instead of Birdie sitting on my couch next to me, she has climbed on the top of one of my shelves as her new favorite spot in my knitting room. She's trying to decide if she wants to get down now. Here comes Birdie. I'm just gonna make Birdie make a little appearance, and then she wants to go. Oh, you're gonna snake my sweater. Okay, out you go. I can't remember exactly where I was at with this one. Got distracted by my cat. I won't go into it fully. I want to talk about it more, I guess, once it's blocked and I can wear it, show it off a little bit more. So this is an Intarsia colorwork project. It's worked flat and seamed. It was a challenging knit. So I'm feeling like I can't believe I finished it. Like when I got to about like here on the front panel, I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm just gonna tell her like, sorry, I can't do it. Like it was very rewarding to do, but it just felt like I felt like it was gonna be impossible to finish. The back is just like, let's turn around my mannequin. It has a couple of panels or like rows of color work at the bottom. This is color work too, but it's just plain. And then the front has the Intarsia. Dropping yarn here now. And once I figured out to like working color work flat, twisting my yarn for the Intarsia, like those things weren't hard. The multiple balls of yarn, managing all of that was what was stressful. So it was like, there's two balls here. One of them is the same color in here, so I carried that one through, but I had another ball here, 2 more here, 2 new ones here, and another one here. And so like it was just a lot. And I made little bobbins out of just like cardboard, and they worked pretty good, but then they would get tangled, and so then I would just like make a little like butterfly bobbin on my fingers. Like sometimes they'd unravel everywhere. That part was what was challenging about this. I feel very confident now in my colorwork flat knitting, my like purling colorwork. I feel like I can, yes, I have that skill now. I know how to do that, because the entire project was that, every other row was colorwork flat, and I can do it now. And the intarsia too. Like I'm very happy with how my intarsia joins turned out. I think with I've steam blocked it. I steam blocked the pieces before I seamed them, and then I steamed it again a little bit once I added the like neckband and the arm bands, but it does, I'm gonna give it a good soak. Anyways, it's done. This one's done, this one's done, and now I'm like, now what do I do? In the meantime, I'd cast on a hat. I'll show that, I guess. I had a meeting 2 weeks ago, and so I cast on a hat beforehand so that I could just knit during it. This is Knit Pick City Tweed DK in the color Morning Glory. Purple. When I used Knit Pick's Brava Sport for a sweater that I knit for my friend who can't wear wool, so it's acrylic. I looked up every single acrylic yarn that has ever existed and settled on that one because I had the colors that I wanted and had really good reviews about the quality and stuff. I'd never knit with Knit Pick's yarn before. My very first set of interchangeable needles my husband bought for me, and he ordered them from Knit Picks, and I was like, how did you know? And I have wanted to try their yarn, and I ordered more things from them when I ordered the sweater quantity of stuff for my friend, because I was like, well, I'm paying for shipping from the States, and it took a long time for it to come, weirdly, so I bought a couple other random things. So this was one of them. I bought some sock yarn, I think, that I was going to make a sweater for my son. And I bought one mohair, I think. I bought something else too. I can't remember now. Anyways, that was ages ago. So I just, yeah, cast on for a hat. Not much to it. I'm using the numbers from the Barley hat by Tin Can Knits. Is that what it's called? I'm not doing the garter panel on the side. I just wanted some numbers, and that's a free hat pattern. They've been talking about their app. I have been using their app. I've knit a couple of baby toques using that same pattern in the last little bit. And yeah, it's handy dandy. The other very random thing that I cast on is, you will never guess based on what I'm about to show you, it is a skirt. So, like I said, I have been watching Knitting a Good Yarn. I found them randomly. You probably all know who they are, but I just found them. And I was telling my friend, my non-knitter friend, who is my best friend, and so sometimes she watches my knitting podcast, and then asks me, what was that? What does whip mean? And then I appreciate that she's like, I don't expect you to watch this, but thank you for supporting me. Anyways, I was telling her this, oh yeah, I found this new podcast, and they're 3-hour-long episodes, and she was like, what? So it's it's exactly what I needed that particular week. It was just to it felt like sitting and having a knitting date with a friend, 2 friends. So anyways, Carmen from that podcast a while back, 8 months ago, because I've been going through all their old episodes, she knit this skirt called the Varm Skirt it's a pattern recipe by Miss Evil Knits. And so it's just in a blog post. It's just gives you a rough idea of you can knit it in any weight of yarn, any gauge. You decide your own numbers. It's just kind of a general here's what you could do, and you could get a skirt at the end of it. And so how it works is you cast on for a waistband, knit this way, and then you pick up stitches and knit down for the the body of the skirt. I don't know what you would call that. I've never knit a skirt before. This would not be the way that I would have guessed that I'm making a skirt. I went for a very wide, I should loosen this, a very wide waistband. See there, it's a provisional cast on at the beginning, and then at the end you come back around and graft them together. You can add like an elastic in the middle if you want to cinch it up a bit. Carmen had quite a adventure with hers. It ended up way too big, so she just like cut it and sewed it back together again. I cast this on just the other day. I needed a break from the intarsia. I like the idea about having something warm to wear over leggings, potentially with another, like with a top, like with a hand knit sweater too. I'm knitting this in Briggs & Little Regal. Is that the one? Yeah, Regal. It's called Brown Heather, I think. Let's see if that'll show up. It's got quite a nice heathering to it, I guess you would say. So when you look at it up close, it's like there's green and orange and blue. The base, like with the brown. So from far away, it just looks brown, but it's nice to knit with because it's like interesting to look at. I bought a huge box worth of Briggs & Little last year sometime. It was like in an Etsy shop, and they were getting rid of all of their yarn, and they were like $3 a skein. So I was like, yep, sure, yes, I will buy that. I bought a whole bunch, and this is the first time I'm using any of it. We'll see how it goes. I have to knit, let's see, what's my hip circumference? I don't know at this moment. I have to knit many inches of a little tube, and then we'll see what happens from there. Don't hold your breath that this is a project that gets finished, but it's just what I needed at the moment, or at that time, to knit on. The other thing that I've been working on is some Christmas stockings for said best friend of mine. She asked me a long time ago to make her stockings well, yeah, it's a long story. She asked me a long time to make some stockings for her kids to match ones that her grandma had made. And then she had, like, my friend had more kids, and so then grandma hadn't made ones for those kids, and I was like, yes, I would love to. But yeah, things happened, life happened. Last Christmas happened for me. I'm trying to get them done now for this Christmas for her. So now I'll just grab them. This is the ball of yarn I'm using. my 5-year-old saw that and he was like, wow, that's huge. Can I pick it up? So this is the first one. It's almost finished. Obviously I have to weave in ends. I just did the little toe. I need to pick up for the heel. It's very Christmassy, you know. And then I just have the start of this one going. I had knit one, but it was like way weird proportions, and so I'm redoing that one. And yeah, the ones that her grandma had made, like there was one that was kind of striped like that. There's one that was just like plain red that had like a Christmas tree like embroidered over top, so I'm going to do that, like embroider their names on and stuff. And yeah, so I'm trying, Cassie, I promise. I would also like to make a stocking for, I had made family stockings for my family like quite a few years ago, and I also would like to make one for my daughter Beth. And I told my husband, like, well, maybe I'll just like make her a small one, like she could still like, we can still hang up her stocking, but like it doesn't need to be the big full one. And he was like, thought that was weird that I would just make her a small stocking. But yeah, then the kind of like dark humor comes into play of like, that happens sometimes when your baby dies. It's like, well, I'm not putting things in her stocking. She's not here. So for consistency's sake, I would like her to have one that matches the rest of us, but we'll see. Those ones are like, you know, maybe I'll put a picture up. They're like color work. Little designs on them and stuff. I can't remember the pattern now, but I'll add that. I'll add that in. Okay, the other thing I wanted to mention just a little bit, right after I filmed my last episode, I went to a spinning class at it was hosted at a yarn shop here in Edmonton. And then the person who was teaching the class is a local maker here called, well, her company is called 2x Infinity. And so she dyes fiber and it's really lovely things. And so it was great. She's a master spinner. And the class was called like Spinning It Up a Notch, which was like, that was great. That's exactly what I was looking for. That it was like, okay, you're not a beginner. You just like need some extra, like here's some tips. Here's some like, here's how to take things up a notch. Here's this other technique that you can try. Here's this like hack that you might not know about. We practiced tons of different things. It was like 3-hour class. I didn't realize it was that long. We practiced tons of different things. She had bats that she had made up that we got to choose. And then I used a diz, is that what it's called? To like, you know, prepare it like this, and then I can spin it sometime at home. Let's see if I can show that off a little bit. I think I took pictures of it before I mangled it. Just a little bit here. It's my little like practice yarn that I was working on. See that? So it was like, yeah, it was good to just like have somebody watch me and then give me guidance about what I was doing. She also had these little bundles of raw fleece for us. And I don't know what counts as raw, like it's washed, but it's like, you know, can you see the little, it's still like in its locks, right? Can you see the hay? Like the little curlicues at the ends. And so we talked about different ways to like card it and like flick it and whatever. And I didn't actually get to spinning any of that. I was focused on whatever other thing I was working on, but anyways, so that was cool to like be able to do that. I have a lamb's fleece coming my way at some point from Riverside Farms, which is a farm in BC. They have like a, what do they call it? Adopt a sheep kind of thing. So I have a little sheep who she sends me pictures every once in a while. I got to name him. His name is Archer, which the theme was like celestial or something, that she had like chosen something like that, or like stars and space and stars or something. It sounded nicer than that. I chose Archer just because Archer is Sagittarius and Beth would be Sagittarius, and I'm not into astrology, but it's like, well, yeah, sure, let's do that. Anyways, I will get his first shearing. I could either pay to have it like processed and spun up, or I could just like get the fleece. And I was like, sure, let's just get the fleece. So, you know, it's like I paid a certain amount of money just to like support the farm basically, and the bonus of that is that I get this lovely fleece. So anyways, I will obviously be talking about that when the time comes, and we'll be very carefully learning how to process the fleece and spinning it. So yeah, I felt like really excited about the spinning class, and then promptly did not spin again afterwards, which sounds about right. I felt like I've been on some deadlines for these knits. I don't have any more test knits coming up, and so that's probably for the best. And other things that I like want to do, like my son needs a new toque. Okay, I'm gonna knit him a toque. Okay, there's a couple of acquisitions from last time that I didn't talk about that I wanted to share, and then just a little bit of yarn that I got. So I got 3 books back in, probably in September, I guess now. But so one of them was Pom Pom, the autumn 2023. Let's all like take a moment to be sad that Pom Pom will be no more. I'm definitely gonna get their last 2 issues. But this was just like, I have a small collection of Pom Pom. It's not like I have every issue, but I really loved the aesthetic of this one. I loved that Candace from Farmers Starter Fibers was the editor for it, and yeah, I just reminded me of Montana and the retreat, and yeah, I just like loved the vibe of it. So I don't know if I'm gonna, I've yet to knit anything from any of my knitting magazines that I have, but I wanted to add this one to my collection, so that was nice. And then I also bought the Lina magazine. This was my first one from them. I haven't actually read through all of it yet, but just also very much like love the aesthetic of it. It feels very special, I think, to like have such a beautifully curated knitting magazine book kind of thing. There are a couple patterns in here that I would potentially be more likely to knit than in the pom-pom one, but yeah. See, I just flipped one of them. This is one that actually had initially caught my eye, called Preppy. Yeah, by Julia Wilkins. And then of course the Turtle Dove cardigan. It's just like classic. Oh yeah, there was an interview with Squidney Knits, which was like very lovely. I've been following her for a long time. So anyways, that was fun to get. And then the other thing that I got was from a friend, a knitting friend that I made. We connected through the Andrew Mowry knit along that was in the spring, and then turns out she was like knitting with a yarn, and I was like, oh, that's local to me, and she was like, oh, me too. Like, oh, where do you live? In Edmonton. Oh, me too. So we like met for coffee, and then yeah, just we meet for coffee every couple of months and talk about knitting and talk about life, and it's really lovely. So I hadn't seen her in a while, so we got together again, I'm not sure, maybe in September, and she was like, I have a gift for you, and I was like, I have a gift for you. I bought her a skein of yarn from Farmers Starter Fibers when I was there for the retreat in June, and she had bought me a book, and so we had talked about this book like previously, and she'd really enjoyed it, and so she bought me a copy of it. So it's called Unraveling Canada by Sylvia Olsen, and I haven't started reading it yet, but it sounds really interesting. The author kind of like goes through like across Canada and like talks about different aspects of like knitting history and culture. Why my friend thought I'd be interested in it is because there's quite a section about Cowichan sweaters, which I'm very interested in about. Anyways, I'm looking forward to reading that. I think that'll be a like Christmas break read for me. Okay, and then just a couple of skeins of random yarn that I bought. I had to go back. I bought the Jameson and Smith for this one from the Fiber Nook here in Edmonton, and I had run out of my main color, and so I had to go back and like buy a couple more little balls of it. Of course, while I was there, I just like had to wander around the whole shop. My friend asked me to make her a toque, and I was like, yes, sure. And so I bought some yarn while I was there to do that, and so it's Barocco Vintage, worsted weight, also an acrylic and wool blend, washable, needed to be washable for her, and it's quite soft. So yeah, she wanted a purple and gray toque, like perfect. So I'm gonna work on that this week probably. And yeah, I have my Rowan cardigan on the go still. Not sure what how much I will focus on that. Like I said, I've had these other deadline knits with like sample knit, test knits. This was a self-imposed deadline because I wanted to do it for the knit along. I've talked about this probably every episode. I had it in my head that I wanted to make this Rowan cardigan. Initially it was the cable blanket, and then I was like, nope, not loving it. Started this cardigan, really enjoying knitting it, but I'd had it in my head that I wanted to finish it by my daughter's birthday. And I think that looming, like, oh, what if I don't finish it, is just like completely getting rid of my motivation to work on it. So I think I need to like remove that deadline in my mind and just like let myself work on it because I want to. I don't know. I'm not sure why it feels so complicated for me. So it's always like a bit uncertain about like from when I film to like actually when I get the podcast uploaded. I just like have to ride the waves of like when I am functioning. And so if I'm functioning well enough to knit, if I'm functioning well enough to like record a podcast, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm also the next day functioning well enough to edit it. And so it takes me a bit of time to get these out the door. But my next podcast episode is going to be a bit of a different one. I would really like to share all the things that I knit for my daughter Beth. Me knitting through my pregnancy was really important to me, and I was going through the other day just like kind of finding all the projects that I had made, and I was surprised actually about how many that I did, and that I actually got things done, and I got almost everything done that I wanted to before she was born. And yeah, I'm really glad for that I have those things. There are a couple things that I didn't finish that it's like, well, I'm not going to go back and finish that. There's something kind of sad and poetic, I think, about it being left undone, which is like I'm okay with. Anyways, I'd really like to share them. They are really important to me. Part of, well, why I started this podcast was because I wanted to talk about this thing that was important to me called knitting. Me knitting during my pregnancy was really important. Beth got to wear some things that I knit. My favorite thing that I knit for her was a blanket that was really special for me, and that's what we had with us when she died. And so yeah, I'm gonna film that's all we're gonna talk about, is just like things that I knit for my daughter. Actually a couple sewing things too, just because I like them and I want to show them off too. And then also I'm going to do a bit of a fundraiser in honor of her birthday coming up. And so I will share more information about that later, but I just wanted to let you know what to expect. I'm probably not going to have another like of these kinds of podcasts until the new year. My daughter's birthday is December 19th. It's going to be a difficult month leading up to that, and Christmas is going to be tough. Knitting was a very important part of my connecting with her while I was pregnant, and knitting has been very important for me in my grieving since she's passed. And so yeah, I think it feels really important for me to put those things out into the world. I think it'll be important for me to do that, like just for myself. As a bonus then, me getting to actually like share that with people who are taking that time to sit with me in that and like honor me and honor my daughter in that by being excited with me about the things that I knit for her, feels important to me. So yeah, that's what's to come. I'm planning to get that out here too sometime in November, and then yeah, I have a couple weeks probably for fundraiser. There's an organization that's somewhat local to us that's been very helpful for us, and so I wanted to try and raise some money to give to them. And yeah, okay, random life thing, knitting talk I think is done. The theme of my last month of my life has been Taylor Swift. I went to see the Eras Tour movie like on opening night, just by myself, I had the time of my life, and yes, I loved it. People were dancing, we were singing and clapping and hollering the like things that people yell at the concerts, and I just loved it. I had such a great time, and also I got COVID. So I'm 99% sure that that's where I got it from. And so went to the concert on a Friday night, and then by Sunday, Sunday I wasn't feeling great. By Monday I was like, okay, what's wrong? I was like, okay, I had COVID. So I was like, and it hit me hard. I was pretty down for that week. While I was sitting in the concert. The first time I was looking up tickets to go again so I can make my husband come with me. And so we went then a couple weeks later together, had a date night, ate movie theater food. We were in, the first time I went to like one of the VIP theaters, and so you can like order food, like real food, like a restaurant, and like they'll bring it to you in your seat. I also got the merch bucket of like bucket of popcorn, and yeah, it was this whole thing. Anyways, but because of how that theater, it doesn't have like this cushy reclining chairs. It has like nice chairs. It has like a little table thing for you to like eat your food. That's like my favorite thing to do, is go to the VIP theater and watch a movie by myself, like order a meal and a big fishbowl cocktail. But anyways, when my husband and I went, we just went to the regular theater, but it had like the good seats that like reclined, and so I was just chilling, like feet up. We were at the very back, and most of our row beside us like went down to the front and just like danced the whole time. And so like we had a bunch of empty seats beside us. I just like sang the whole time, and loved every minute of that additional 3 hours of my life. Seeing the concert again. 1989 Taylor's version came out last week. I've just been listening to that on repeat. That was my first like Taylor Swift album that I listened to when it first came out, and so that has felt very like, yeah, just very lovely to listen to. The vault tracks are great. Yeah, just been very much enjoying that. She just, well, of course she did. She just announced she's coming to Vancouver. After everybody in all of Canada tried to get tickets to the Toronto show, like, just kidding, I'm also coming to Vancouver. So I promptly signed up to try and get tickets for that show, which is like not till next December, like December 2024. But anyways, there's been a lot of Taylor Swift this month, and you know what? I'm just like, if it's bringing me joy, I just need to like lean into that joy. The first time I went, I like dressed up and I wore my Cinnabar shawl, because it felt kind of like fall in New York, Taylor Swift walking with Harry Styles in New York City kind of vibe. And you know, red album, red scarf, that kind of vibe a little bit. Anyways, so that was fun. I never wear that Cinnabar shawl because it's like a very awkward shape and it does not stay well on me, but it was perfect for that. Second time we went, I wore my sibling sweater, my size, and with the goal of being as comfy as possible, and I was, and so that was great. Yeah, anyways, I'm a new Swiftie. Like I said, I listened to that album like 1989 when it came out, but I wasn't like really into it. But I've been recently converted these last few years, and now I am embracing the Swiftiness. So highly recommend 1989 Taylor's version. Midnights has been on repeat for me since it came out. Yeah, getting to sing All Too Well 10-minute version in the theater full of people was like so, it just was beautiful. So yeah, it was fun being with a bunch of people who like also knew every word to that 10-minute long song. Oh, anyways, there's my life update. It's my joy of Taylor Swift. Okay, I'll wrap things up there. Thanks for joining me today. You can find me on Instagram, find me on Ravelry. Comment down below. I read every comment and really appreciate everybody interacting, liking, whatever. Yeah, it really means a lot to me. So thank you to the people who do take the time to do that and take the time to just like spend this time with me and hear about my knitting. Like I truly, really appreciate it. It's been very good for my soul. So yeah, okay, happy knitting.